30 to 50% of physio providers will exit the NDIS within 6 months. Now, this is a claim that was put out in national media just last week, and I question it. I question whether it's based on any data, hard data. And here's the thing. When it comes to people leaving this scheme, the only people who are going to leave are the businesses that fail. Unfortunately, there is now a reality that many businesses will fail within this scheme because it is a bloated and inefficient and difficult scheme to operate in. It is not a simple place for people to establish a business and just get money coming through the door. There's a lot of barriers now to making it efficient, and only the best will survive and thrive. There will be a lot of people who stay at this tension point of enough to get by, but don't really want to hang around for that much longer because this is a cyclical thing. And if you look back, this narrative was put out into the media 12 months ago as well, that 30% of physiotherapy business owners were wanting to leave the scheme. This is the people who are inside the NDIS already. So what is underlying this tension? Well, right now is the absolute peak of fear. It's purely fear that is going around based on a change. And this change has been abhorrent. Let's not understate that. It has been abhorrent. It is an insult to physiotherapists nationally, if not internationally. And it has put a lot of people in a very precarious position with very little notice. The worst part about this change is the notice period, because I guarantee you this government knew that this was something that they wanted to put forward, but they wanted to wait till they won the election and then implement as soon as possible. That is a concern for mine because it has no consideration for the impact of major policy changes on small to medium-sized businesses. Now, from a government perspective, I guarantee you they do not care that much. When you zoom all the way out to government level, you will see that there are businesses everywhere that close down every single year and new businesses take their place. Case in point, Melbourne CBD. Everybody who was running a cafe successfully prior to COVID has cleared out of the CBD, as far as I know. And new businesses have come in. It's not the same market that it used to be, but you can still get a coffee in inner city Melbourne. So let's deconstruct this narrative and see what's actually happening underneath this claim. If we ask people for evidence of this, the hard data we would be looking at is actual financials. We would need to say financials show that businesses cannot survive. This is not the same as business owners stating, I'm not going to be able to survive or I'm going to leave this scheme. Intention is not equal to action. The people who leave will be the ones who are forced to leave. And I would argue that I think 25, if not 30% of businesses will actually do better under this change because the best businesses always get better. The worst leave. The staff who existed in those businesses will have to find somewhere to go. Some of them will go off and become sole traders, and others will look to some of these bigger businesses who run efficient operations, who can scale and deliver their service in a way that allows them to continue functioning in spite of market changes. So those businesses, I swear to you, will be bigger this time next year, not smaller. And that is in terms of revenue and profit. And here's why. The majority of people I've spoken to, and this is from small business owners, sole traders, small business owners, so like $1 million to 10 mil plus business owners, have said the same thing. We have not been charging appropriately. Now, there's low-hanging fruit, which is the per kilometre allowance, which very few people charge for. It's not enormous. Let's be honest. It's 99 cents a kilometre. But that is one line item that some plans will have exist in them that people can charge for, that they are not charging for. But the main one is non-face-to-face billable time. The majority of clinicians do not document their non-face-to-face billable time appropriately. I would estimate for every consult, there is perhaps 15 minutes of non-face-to-face time associated with that consult. This scales up. If you've seen someone 4 times, you are probably going to spend an hour doing some level of administration related to that patient, whether that is calling a plan manager, speaking to a support coordinator, etc. You might be talking to family members. There is hidden work inside the NDIS, which people are not claiming, but it is billable. And that is a conversation no one is having. But when we go and deconstruct this stuff, guess what? This is what we find is people are actually underutilizing the service agreements. It's not a simple change. You literally have to go in plan by plan and change that within service agreements. The client needs to agree, plan managers, etc., in order to do this ethically and fairly by everybody. And that is not a simple process to run, but over the next 6 months, a lot of people will now be renewing people's plans, and they will definitely be putting in more non-face-to-face billable hours. And that change, I propose, will offset the losses from this travel. And here's where this gets a bit ugly, because that shows, all right, I reckon there's going to be actually relatively neutral movement. Some people aren't prepared to make those changes. They're not prepared to make cuts. They will find that they fall out of the system. But for those who are now making these changes, what's going to happen is revenue probably stays flat across the board. And the government has 2 choices then, whether they continue to cut back people's plans or whether they do another round of cuts this time next year. The base case for me is, and this is literally what happens every time the government comes after something in a scheme or whatever and tries to cut it back, people find a way to get around it, and their top line, what they say it's going to cost, almost always blows out from budget to reality, and then they have to come back and make more cuts. It's pretty sick. It's pretty sick how these systems work, but that is how systems in economics tend to behave. The government makes a change. People do everything possible to ensure that that change doesn't affect their businesses negatively. Consequently, the headline change versus what actually happens is fairly minimal, and the cycle repeats. Now, if you are a small to medium-sized business, this is the single most important thing you should be focused on, is the unit economics associated with every single consult. If your staff are not billing appropriately, you are going to have a lot of difficulty running a profitable business. And the issue here is this is a cultural problem. This is a cultural problem across health, where health practitioners do not feel non-face-to-face time is actually worth their dollar amount. They don't feel that because we are used to being direct face-to-face with people all day. All day. We've always seen, admin time has always been a bit of a break. I've always thought this myself, but the reality is that administrative work is real work. It is billable a lot of the time. There are some schemes, support at home is not going to allow those sort of things. It is allowed in NDIS, and people need to maximize that for their own survival and viability. Finally, when we get to why these sort of narratives are happening, we're often finding during times where there is high stress, anecdotal evidence is being used instead of economic reality. We need to look at proper microeconomic data, and this is where everything breaks down. Physio is a very fragmented profession. We have sole traders, we have small and mid-sized clinics, and we have large clinics. You cannot build a pricing structure based on operational costs of 3 fundamentally different business models. Fundamentally different. And that is the conundrum that now exists, because for a sole trader, $180 to see a patient is a very good rate as an independent practitioner. For a small business that is run efficiently, you can build a great team of about, I reckon, 10 to 15, if not 20 practitioners, if you can run that efficiently. And for large businesses who are 60 plus, you can use economies of scale to make these rates work. You see where I'm going? There is this layer in between with this like 20 to 60 staff zone where people are just going to find we're not big enough to have the economies of scale to really lift our margin, and we're not small enough to move quickly. Is everyone's business going to collapse? Are 50% of providers going to leave the scheme? I don't think so. I think we will see a hollowing out of the middle. We will see more sole traders, and we will see big business get bigger. If you are in this catchment, if you're in this like 2 to 5 million range, the best thing you can do is speak to a consultant about how you can optimize your business. This is literally what I do with every business owner. The first thing I do is ask them, what is your vision and what do you want to get from running your practice? And the second thing we do is go through financials and operational costs and look at ways we can improve this, because these marginal gains stack up substantially. You can save yourself, for example, if you can bill an extra 15 minutes per consult, if you're doing 500 consults a week, just think how that stacks up. It's going to be 12 to 15 grand per week that's going back into your business across a year. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that is the difference between a business that's under and one that's surviving over the top, if not thriving, with innovation on top of operational efficiency. So if you're ready to make that leap, by all means, use the booking button below and let's get on a call and see if there's something I can do to help you with your business. Cheers.